What if everything you were ever told about relationships was designed for a completely different type of person than you? Most advice is written for extroverts. By extroverts, optimizing for an extrovert's experience of connection. And if you're the kind of person who processes deeply, who finds small talk genuinely exhausting rather than socially energizing, you've probably spent years squeezing yourself into a framework that was never designed to hold you. The standard script: show up, be confident, talk more, sell yourself, fill the silence, chase the connection. When that leaves you drained or surrounded by shallow interactions, the world tells you the problem is you. Too quiet, too intense, too much in your head. But what if that's backward? What if the very qualities that make you feel like a social misfit are the architecture of an entirely superior connection strategy? Today, we're building the manual. Not generic advice, the blueprint for how a quiet mind bypasses surface-level performance and goes straight to the kind of depth most people never experience. Because to build a high-level connection, you first have to stop using a low-level strategy. Let's start with something that probably happened to you recently. You walk into a social environment, a party, a meeting, or a group dinner. While everyone else is performing, scanning for who to impress, mentally rehearsing their next line, you're doing something completely different. You're noticing, not trying to notice, just noticing. The way someone holds their jaw when answering a question they're not comfortable with. The micro-tension in a person's shoulders when they say, "everything is fine," but their body tells a different story. The gap between what someone claims to value and where their attention actually goes. This isn't a character flaw, it's how your brain is wired. Think about the last time you were absolutely certain about someone within minutes of meeting them and turned out to be right months later. Everyone called it intuition, but it wasn't. It was data. Your visual cortex, freed from the burden of performance, runs a background scan that most people are too busy talking to ever run. This observation intelligence is the result of years spent as an observer rather than a performer. And it gives you something genuinely rare: the ability to assess a person's emotional architecture before you've invested significant energy in them. Think of it as a preliminary scan, the way a thoughtful architect surveys a site before designing anything on it. Here's where it gets really interesting. What you're doing in those moments of quiet observation isn't just a personality quirk. Your brain is running a completely different processing pathway. Cognitive researchers have identified something called sensory processing sensitivity. About 20% of people are born with a nervous system that processes social information more deeply. Not more slowly, more thoroughly. When you pause before speaking, your brain activates the insula and the anterior cingulate cortex, regions tied to empathy and social pattern recognition, at significantly higher levels than when someone fills the silence immediately. The person who rushes to speak is processing the surface: words, tone, basic emotional valence. But by hesitating, by giving your brain those extra seconds, you're accessing a much richer data set. Micro-expressions, inconsistencies between stated values and actual attention. The subtle tension between what someone says they care about and where their eyes go. Most people call this overthinking. The science calls it depth of processing. High-processing individuals don't just notice more. They integrate what they notice into a more accurate model of the person in front of them. Now, I want to pause here because this is where most people check out. They hear, "your brain is wired differently," and think, "Okay, I already know I'm an overthinker. Tell me something I can actually use." So here's the promise. What I'm about to show you isn't another label or coping strategy for being too quiet. It's a filtering mechanism, a way to take the exact thing you've been told is a social weakness and turn it into the most reliable relationship screening tool you'll ever have. It starts with something deceptively simple. During a first conversation, when there's a natural pause, do not rush to fill it. Let the silence sit for about 3 seconds. Then watch what happens. There are two fundamentally different responses. The first type panics, lets nervous laughter out, checks their phone, and pivots to anything to escape the discomfort. I call them noisemakers. Not as judgment, but description. They're uncomfortable with stillness, which means they'll be uncomfortable with emotional depth. Because depth requires pauses. It requires sitting in something unresolved. The second type simply exists in the silence. They hold it naturally. Maybe they look around, maybe they look at you, maybe they even enjoy the momentary pause, like a breath between movements in a piece of music. These are your deep thinkers. These are your people. What the silence test reveals goes deeper than awkwardness tolerance. It tells you about someone's relationship with their own inner world. A person who can't sit in 3 seconds of external silence is almost certainly running from a much louder internal noise. Someone who can hold stillness with you has already made some kind of peace with what lives inside them. That's the foundation everything else is built on. Finding a deep thinker is step 1. But you also need to know whether they can handle you, not the performed version, but the actual person who needs solitude to recharge, who thinks obsessively, who processes emotions slowly. This is selective vulnerability as a filter. The idea is to stop hiding your authentic nature as if it were a defect and start deploying it early and deliberately as a screening mechanism. Share something small but real. Not a trauma dump, just an honest statement. Maybe you genuinely need solitude to recharge. Maybe you think obsessively about one topic for weeks. But here's the part most people get wrong. Don't share it as an apology. Don't share it as a disclaimer. Share it as a simple statement of fact. This is how I work. This is what I need. This is who I am. What happens next is the filter doing its work. Some people will find it strange, too intense, or more than they expected. That's valuable information, not rejection, but clarity. This person can't hold the real version of you. You've just saved enormous time and energy that would have been spent performing. But some people, the ones you're actually looking for, will lean in. They'll recognize something. They might share something equally real in return. In that moment, the frequency shifts. You're no longer performing a social transaction. You're recognizing each other. Because the goal was never to be liked by everyone. The goal is to be recognized by the right one. Once you've found someone who passes the observation audit and the vulnerability filter, you enter the most sophisticated phase, consciously architecting the connection. Standard advice lets relationships develop randomly, reactively, chaotically. The Quiet Genius framework treats it like a thoughtful system. Inputs and outputs. What this requires from you and what it genuinely returns. One of the most important pieces is communicating your energy needs without creating fear. For deep processing introverts, solitude isn't a luxury, it's a biological necessity. It's how you metabolize experience and return to yourself. When you don't get it, you become a less present, less generous version of yourself. Sacrificing solitude to spend more time with someone doesn't strengthen the connection, it degrades it. The framing matters enormously. I need space from you lands as abandonment. I need solitude so that when I'm with you, I'm fully here. That lands as commitment. That distinction, delivered with warmth, transforms something that could feel like distance into something that deepens trust. The other side is what you bring to the presence itself. You have a rare capacity, the ability to genuinely slow down inside a moment, not rushing toward the next thing, actually inhabiting the present with full awareness. This creates core memories of a quiet evening where nothing extraordinary happened, but both of you felt entirely seen. A conversation that went somewhere unexpected and true. The stillness that only happens between two people not afraid of depth. That's not a consolation prize for being quiet. That's the entire point. Here's what I want you to do. Not a mental note you agree with and forget. A specific, time-boxed experiment. For the next 7 days, in every conversation lasting more than 5 minutes, deploy the silence test once. 1 natural pause. 3 seconds. Don't explain what you're doing. Just let the silence sit and observe what happens. Then log it. 2 columns. Who and what happened. Sarah filled the pause with nervous laughter. Mike held it, then asked a better question. At the end of the week, read that log back. You're not grading anyone. You're building a real data set of who in your life has the capacity for depth. There are people you've been investing energy into who can't sit in 3 seconds of silence with you. And there are probably 1 or 2 you've been overlooking who passed the test without either of you realizing. 1 week. 1 silence per conversation. 1 log entry. Because understanding a framework and actually rewiring who you let in are 2 different things. Here's the complete picture. Relationships for a quiet genius aren't about finding your other half. That's a framework built on incompleteness. The idea that you need someone else to resolve something missing in you. The connections that actually last are built between two complete, complex, deeply individual systems who find a way to run in parallel. Both whole. Both fully themselves. Choosing each other deliberately because of that depth, not despite it. This principle shows up everywhere once you start looking for it. The ironic art of connecting deeply isn't about becoming more outgoing, more entertaining. It's about becoming more precisely who you already are, and having the courage to let that version be seen early enough for the right people to find it. So, which part of your quiet genius has been the hardest to share in a relationship? The silence? The intensity? The need for solitude? Drop it in the comments. The architecture of real connection gets built in conversations exactly like this one. If this landed for you, subscribe and share with someone who needs to hear it.